So our next speaker is the lovely Taylor McNally. She is a Calgary-based entrepreneur and now civil rights activist. She is the creator of Rural Alberta Against Racism, and her voice has been heard all over Alberta. So without further ado, I'll pass you off to Taylor.
Hello, everybody. I'm not sure why I cannot just see my face here. How's that working? Okay, you can see me. Okay, I'm going to start my timer too. Thank you so much, Gitz. I feel so honored to be able to speak today with two incredible leaders and speakers and activists and advocates out here. I'm so grateful for Julia for having me. Let me start this up. I actually do public speaking for a living, but I am a bit nervous today. But we're gonna get right into this. I'm happy on a lot of the things that Gitz has brought up, and really just like no bullshit. Thank you for swearing too, because I sometimes have a problem with swearing, and I'm just going to. There's going to be some f-bombs dropped, and I think it is totally fine to get a little bit heated on these topics. I want to set my phone up here somehow. Use my water. This is what we do in the background. All right. So I'm just going to start off first with, I guess, kind of my story and where I come from, which I kind of like to start with my mom's story, just because it doesn't. I feel a lot of us are still very angry at our parents. A lot of us resent people, and we sometimes forget how even our parents were once children too. Our parents are human as well, and we all go through experiences, and we all have these struggles to deal with. And sometimes we forget that we kind of all are struggling at one point or another. So my mom came from a very religious family, a very broken family. She has three brothers. Three of them are from different fathers, I guess, except one. And she, just because of the home and the lifestyle, she definitely wanted to get out of there. She wanted to rebel a little bit, I guess, in a way. And she ended up getting pregnant with me when she was 16 years old. And when her mom found that out, that she was pregnant at 16 and pregnant with a black man, that was not okay. So they were living in the Ponoka area, and her mother sent her on a Greyhound bus to Saskatoon, all alone, 16 years old, pregnant, with nothing. She didn't know anybody out there. So I believe the first year or two of my life, I grew up in a Bethany home. It's really hard for me to kind of put dates and stuff together at times because we did move a lot, and but I do believe it was the first year or two of my life we were in a Bethany home where I was raised with her. And of course, she was raised in there as well. She's a young mom, and she has nobody and nothing. So yeah, just kind of shipped away to do that on her own. I feel like, I'm not very close to my mom now, unfortunately. She does deal with mental illness. That's somewhere I feel where the system continues to fail her over the years. I think something that's really important and something I try to talk about when I'm speaking, especially in rural communities, is that yes, we are marching for Black lives and Indigenous lives. But we have to remember that the government doesn't give a fuck about anybody. Okay, they don't give a fuck about white people. They don't give a fuck about Black people or Indigenous people. That's the reality of the situation. That's why when we focus on the most marginalized and racialized folks, that when we help boost their voices and help fix some of these problems that we deal with, we literally are helping everybody and changing the entire system for everyone. But the healthcare system definitely failed her. Healthcare system and poverty, I feel, is something that is kind of like the base of crime. People want to say police help fix crime, and it's like, why not fix it at the root of the problem, which is poverty and mental health. So anyway, so she deals with bipolar schizophrenia. So it was a very interesting time growing up. Of course, I resented her for some time, and after a while, growing up and having my own child, I realized, man, that woman has gone through a lot of shit, and it wasn't her fault. So, but at 16, I also left home. I was living in, I guess I should say, sorry, let me backtrack a little bit. Okay, so we moved from Saskatoon. That's where I was born. We moved from Saskatoon to Alberta when I was 10 years old. We moved to a small town called Cremona, Alberta. It is a village of 400 people. That was the first time I actually experienced racism. I believe I was 11 years old and I was called a nigger. In that moment, it was, and I think it's a lot of the situation, when we speak of systemic racism, that it's not something, sometimes it's not people meaning to be racist. It's just things we have learned over time, and especially in these small communities where it's just something that's been taught over generations of how to just teach people or how to teach your children. So when this man or this boy at the time had used the word nigger, he didn't really know what it meant or where it came from, the history behind it. He just knew it was the word to say to somebody black that would be offensive. Then after Cremona, we lived in Didsbury, and when I was 16, I left home from Didsbury. I came to the big city of Calgary to follow my dreams of working at Rexall. So I got here, and I ended up having my first child just before my 20th birthday. Ended up being a single mom as well. History really does repeat itself. And it was a very interesting time fleeing an abusive relationship and being a single mom, a black woman with a child that looks very white. And, even now I feel a lot of the jobs, I of course didn't go back to school after I left home at 16. So I didn't have education. I could work in a bar and maybe I could get some sort of office work. When I first fled that relationship, I had to stay in a women's shelter. I was there for a year, tried to get out on my own, and you can't, when it's just you, if there's single parents out here, or even if you're in a family that has two parents still, it's very difficult to still find that job. You're working 9 to 5, that you need to be there, and you have to find daycare for your child, and be able to get there on time to pick them up, and then you're working just to pay daycare. Like nothing, everything is just working against us. I actually ended up going back to that abusive relationship because I could not make it work on my own. But eventually I got out. Hallelujah. It's been 9 years now. It's been great. It's been a very interesting time just trying to navigate things. I ended up just leaving and starting my own businesses, which is great, but it's still a struggle in that way. But I'm very grateful for what I have been able to do over time. So since it's been talked about a little bit already, this white privilege, let's touch on that just a little bit. There's the white privilege and how that works with systemic racism. And honestly, I'm fucking tired of having to explain what white privilege means. There's a lot of things we talk about, and it's like, man, if you don't understand what this is already at this point, it's not because you don't understand. It's because you don't want to understand. But it's also important to keep talking about it, because maybe there's that one person like, oh, white privilege. Yes, I get it now. So white privilege, of course, is not all about how much money you make, I think, or how much you've struggled in poverty as a child. People like to bring that up, like, well, I grew up in poverty, or I didn't have all of these opportunities growing up. And I think, or even, a lot of people are not coming out to protests or things like that because they need to take care of their mental health. And very important that, yes, you need to take care of yourself first, of course, but it's a privilege to be able to make the option, or have the option to stand back from something because you're not feeling well that day. I have the first time I tried to take my own life, I was 11 or 12 years old, because I was being bullied in school, because I was the only black child living in town, and probably the first black person most of them had ever seen in real life. So it's a privilege to be able to just be like, you know what, I'm going to sit this one out because I'm just not feeling it today. Man, I've been out here almost every day for 5 months, and there's a lot of days I'm just not feeling it. And unfortunately, I don't really have that choice. I don't have the option to just sit back, as many of us do. So that's a privilege. Systemic racism is the fact that the last segregated school in Canada closed in 1983, just outside Halifax. This is something that I just recently learned about as well, and being able to, I don't know, we've been put back for so long that we're just now being able to catch up. It's that equity. Systemic racism. The Canadian medical schools in 1918 banned Black students from applying. So, and that wasn't like fully taken out of the system until 2018. I think we just celebrated 5 Black women getting into medical school this year. Or I don't think they go until 2023, but they were just accepted. And it's like, that's such an amazing thing to celebrate. But like, why are we just celebrating that in 2020? Or that in Calgary, there are nearly 400 law students and only 6 of them are Black, because even the admissions try to keep Black people and Indigenous people from applying. What is this book, actually? Do I have it in here? Peace and Good Order. It's a book. I don't have the cover on it right now. I don't know where the cover is. I just like the feeling of this. But I just got this book, Peace and Good Order by Harold R. Johnson. He was a lawyer, an Indigenous lawyer from here in Canada. And he talks about Harvard, and he's like, they make it seem so hard and try to deter us from even applying, from getting in. Like, when I got in there, man, like, I could have learned this back in Canada, but it's that piece of paper having that, right? But everything's just stacked against us from even getting into these places. So it comes to that separation between equality and equity. Equality is giving us all equal rights. That's wonderful. That I definitely want to be able to do what other people are doing. But when we've been set back for so long, and white people have been able to have all of these opportunities for hundreds of years, there's still this power struggle. So we need that equity. We need to be able to catch up. We need to be able to match white people, our white counterparts out here. So what was this other? There's actually something I did. That's the thing too. I grew up in a white family, in a predominantly white community, and there's a lot of things I am just learning as a Black woman. Full disclosure, we have Julia up in this house too, so we're trying to make sure sounds are not all over the place. But there's a lot of things I'm learning about every day as well. So I just learned about the Battle of Land Titles out east, where so Black people are still fighting to have their land titles. This is land that has been passed on throughout generations. They pay taxes there, they've taken care of this land, but they don't have land titles on the land, so they're unable to sell, they're unable to mortgage, they're unable to divide. They're just stuck with this piece of property that anybody can come and take it away from them at any time, even though they've been there for hundreds of years. So when we get onto the topic of land and Indigenous peoples, all right, it's a privilege to know that, to just find out that the last residential school closed in 1996. This is something even I myself just learned recently. This is not something that I was taught in school. We don't learn about these things. I hope I speak on this all right, and I hope I won't get a message from Gits afterwards and be like, Taylor, you fucked up. I listened to the speaker in Blackfalds. I won't mention his name, but he was absolutely incredible. And he, when he spoke about this situation, it definitely opened my eyes up to a lot more going on. And speaking of his family's experience in residential schools, so his mom, even at 7 years old, having to learn that if she wet the bed before she went to sleep, she wouldn't get raped at night. At 7 years old, that's what she had to teach herself. And the schools were just closed in 1996, and then we have to wonder what was there to help them afterwards. The government and everybody has made Canadians seem to think that we look at Indigenous people as just drunk natives, homeless pieces of shit. That's how they make us look at them, so that they continue taking all of their rights away, continue taking their land to build fucking pipelines, continue to just do whatever they want to do, while the rest of us just don't say anything or don't do anything, because we're just taught to look at them as less than. So 1996, let's say residential schools all close, and then what? All of these people are just out there after being abused physically, sexually, mentally for all of these years, and there's no resources left to them. There's no mental health resources left to them. It's basically segregation. Continue to put people on reservations and put them into lands and places they didn't even want in the first place, and they have to deal with all of this trauma on their own, and then have families of their own. And if you were somebody who has been abused your entire life, who has never known what it's like to feel love or be loved, how would you know how to do that for your own children? It's just this complete cycle of trauma over generations. And then we wonder why we have so many Indigenous peoples on the street. They've never gotten the support they need. And when they do need it, everything, even as a white person, okay, when you go to get resources, mental health resources, they need to put you in these certain boxes. They need to find the right doctor for you. And a lot of the times they're not getting the right doctor they need, or they make it completely unaffordable. We're supposed to have all these health benefits here in Canada, but we're not getting the ones we need most, which is for mental health. So that's why I keep saying a lot. The whole problem, it really keeps coming back to mental health and poverty. I am part of the Defund Coalition. So this is a group of many organizations throughout Alberta trying to work on, right now, the Defund project in Calgary. I believe the campaign is actually launching today. So I just remembered that now. And because I think a lot of people, something happens and we want to scream defund the police because we're mad, or abolish the police because we're mad, and nobody really knows what it means behind there. If people ask questions about it, nobody knows how to answer it, and people get scared. They're like, well, we need police. I mean, do we? Like, I feel like I am all for abolish. I'm also all for defunding. Let's see what we can do. Let's see how we can take some money out of them. The Calgary budget for the Calgary Police Service was $450 million for this year. I'm gonna have to double check that. It was a fuck ton of money. Okay, yeah, double check. I think it was $450 million for this year. It's a lot of money, especially when we see them doing things. We were at the Black Trans Lives Matter protest here in Calgary, and we have anti-immigration hate group Proud Boys present, and they are standing off to the side, and we have CPS blockading them with their bikes. I'm actually going to, I wish I was as prepared as gets about having slideshows. I'm going to see if I can just pull up a couple videos really quickly here with some of the shit I've been dealing with. Give me a minute, and we'll see what else we're paying for, Okay, I'm hoping this works right. Log in? Sure. Hold on. Sorry, guys. Okay, we logged in. All right. Now let me just... Okay. So, can you just see if this pops up? I hope it works for everybody. I'm so sorry. Oh, can you give me host abilities again, please, if you're still there? Okay, thanks, Gibbs. All right, let's, and hopefully y'all can hear this. Okay, so this is, if you've been following about what we've been doing, perfect. If you have been following us and seeing what we've been doing out here in rural Alberta, things have gotten very heated. The RCMP are, as Gitz already mentioned, they're a fucking joke. So this is a response. We just recently had a friend get hit by a truck in Ponoka while he was peacefully protesting. And Black and Indigenous Alliance Alberta and it was just Black and Indigenous Alliance Alberta held a press conference to discuss what was going on here. Of course, there were counter-protesters. They're not counter-protesters. They are hate groups within Canada. They are agitators. Came to crash this while trying to chant free speech, okay? So this was a response from one of the RCMP officers. I'm sure many of you have already seen this, but I just want to make sure that we hear it again.
Are you suggesting one side's voice is more important than the others? Because it's not. So we let everybody say what they need to say as peacefully as they can, and that's how this country works. Thank you.
I don't know about you, that just makes me want to just throw up in my mouth completely, So, and then if you haven't seen the footage of what he's talking about, we want everybody to have free speech and, one's voice is not better than the other. Let's just see what he sees as peaceful for a minute, okay?
These guys here, tensions running high Monday in the central Alberta town of Ponoka. The group Black and Indigenous Alliance holding a news conference after one of their protesters was attacked during an anti-racism rally. But counter-protesters using a megaphone wouldn't let them speak. Interrupting the media event.
Oh, yes, yeah, So, and they started right off the bat. They didn't even let these guys do the land acknowledgement, okay? That is a whole other level of disrespect, I feel. I mean, when I look at stuff like that, I'm like, okay, yes, let me stop screen sharing. Okay, it's a good thing Julia is here in the room, so then I know what's happening here. Can you see me now? Okay, we're good. When I see things like that happen, or the police protecting the Proud Boys, it's very, this is what our tax dollars are going to. I want my money back. I did not sign up for this. I don't want this. And then I also get to, I'm totally for abolish. What can we do outside of this? But we're going to focus on defund first. Let's just see what can happen if we can take some money from them and put it into other programs and other areas that can better help our society and our world. I mean, the thing is, police right now are called to do absolutely everything. The police were first established in the 1830s in the colonization of Indigenous peoples. That's why they were created, as well as catching runaway slaves. This was their only purpose of why they were brought into our society. And I think it's wild to think that over time they would just blend in and be able to protect all of us, protect and serve, So the first step to defunding, I want to explain this just a little bit so people can better understand what we were asking for. We did send a letter into City Hall, into Town Council, and everybody is reviewing it. We have had some responses back, and we are starting a campaign today to help people better understand what is happening. So hopefully by November, we can get some of these things in place. And I think it's so important to remember that within this or anti-racism work, it is a marathon and not a sprint. Okay, it takes a very long time to do anything. We're not going to see things happen tomorrow or next week or in a month. This is going to take probably hundreds of years to change, because when we look at fixing the lives for Black and Indigenous people and all of people of color, it literally is breaking every single system down that we have to create new. So the first point of defund is defund to rebuild. So we're going to rebuild relationships with, we want them to rebuild relationships with marginalized groups, rebuild infrastructure to include marginalized groups, rebuild the systems to allow marginalized groups to sit at the very tables that are making the decisions for Black and Indigenous people. I think that is something very important to remember, that, that sitting at these tables in politics, especially making these decisions for us, is all white people, and usually white men. The system was created to boost white men. Let's just remember that, okay? Even though if you're a white man right now, they probably don't give a fuck about you. But this is what the system was built for. Okay, we're going to defund to invest. So we need to invest in Black and Indigenous businesses to create equity, invest in proactive community programs, and invest in the futures of marginalized groups. And providing opportunities for them. I know there are some people like Shu, a friend of mine, she has organized some of the protests here in Calgary. She has gone into a lot of the businesses here in the city to teach their offices or talk with their offices about how to be anti-racist and how to create those opportunities. It's not enough just to have a person, you know, we have to hire 5% of Indigenous people this year or 5% of Black people this year. No, we want, how is that helping them though if they're not able to grow more in the city? You're just going to bring them in, give them a minimum wage job. How are we going to provide them a long-lasting opportunity? So bring in students for apprenticeship work, sponsor them, provide some sort of opportunities that are more long lasting so that we can sit at these tables, or just put us in there already. Like, that's kind of what we're working for. Defund to reform. So funding community programs and services that alleviate the responsibilities traditionally placed on the shoulders of police. Again, police are called in to do everything from murder to saving a cat from a tree to a robbery at the dollar store. Like, they're just called in to do everything. Of course, they're tired. Any police and RCMP members I do speak with, they do agree. Yeah, we get called in to do everything, and sometimes there's not the necessary people on board to do it. It's like in Wetaskiwin, their mental health unit is all built into the hospital there, and when you go, I think it's at 9 p.m. that their mental health unit is no longer open. So between 9 p.m. and 9 a.m. you could go there, and if you're dealing with a mental health issue, you have to sit there and wait until somebody's there in the morning, or you go home and hopefully just ride it out. And usually at that point, if something happens, somebody's calling the police on you, and there's nobody else there to care for you. And the police are not trained for these distressed calls. The police are not trained for these mental health, with these mental health problems and calls. So they don't respond the way they should be. Build true justice into our systems by establishing a community-appointed accountability board comprised primarily of Black and Indigenous people. Again, it's great if the justice system wants to try and hold police accountable, but who is holding those people accountable? Again, it's white people. We need accountability boards made of Black and Indigenous people, so we can call out their shit and make sure justice is served.
How many police killings
with pillars of accountability and militarization of police. I don't know why the Edmonton Police Service just bought another armored vehicle. For what? When have we ever seen these out? And having police data and complaints available to the public, especially race-based data. I forget the amount of what Edmonton had to pay to receive Edmonton's carding numbers, but it was thousands and thousands of dollars when this information should be readily available to the public. So when situations arise, we can all look in and be like, yo, they have a track record of this shit. We should probably look into it. Otherwise, things just keep going under the table and we hear one story here and there and nothing is being taken seriously. So we're asking to fund the social services that will create real, meaningful change in our community, which will statistically support a reduced need for police. So fixing the root of the problem of suffering financially, mentally, physically helps create better lives for everybody in the end game. And I didn't think I was going to use all of my 30 minutes, but I did. But I think I kind of got as much as I wanted to out there. Again, I really appreciate everybody here today. There's 90 of you, so thank you so much. I'm going to pass this back to Julia, and then we're going to have Miss Kay in here.